that.
Grant Robertson.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure we're all grateful for the lessons from Mr Heatley on being in Cabinet. He knows a lot about being in Cabinet and a lot about being out of Cabinet as well. Mr Speaker, there's a saying that many of us would have been told by our parents. What a tangled web you weave when at first you set out to deceive. And what we have seen from this Prime Minister John Key and this government is what we call the web of deceit. This is it here, for the benefit of my colleagues, the web of deceit. And members of the House will notice at the centre of the web of deceit is John Key, because he has been at the centre of every single cover-up, every single mistruth, every single lie by omission that has happened in this House around the security and intelligence agencies. And that started right from the beginning. Donkey deep he is indeed. That started right from the beginning of this term of Parliament when it comes to John Banks, the member who couldn't remember visiting this gentleman, Kim.com, and his giraffe. I would remember visiting Kim.com and his giraffe if that happened to me in a helicopter. But this member couldn't remember that John Banks. Right beside him in our web of deceit is Ian Fletcher. And let's be absolutely clear, it took 10 days for the Prime Minister to acknowledge his role in appointing Ian Fletcher to that job of the Director of GCSB. But then beside him in our web of deceit is Peter Dunn. And he is at the centre of what is one of the most serious things that I have heard in this Parliament. That is the spying and intrusion upon a journalist who works in this building. And the material that was tabled in the House today is very instructive, Mr Speaker. It's very instructive. What that material says is that what was being sought was calls to and from Andrea Vance's parliamentary extension, but also her mobile phone and her landline. Her mobile phone, her parliamentary extension and her landline. The Prime Minister stood up here in this House today and said everybody would have expected the terms of reference of this inquiry to be understood. Well, what Mr Key has to answer is how is it that his inquiry, the Henry inquiry, was asking for Andrea Vance's mobile phone and personal landline calls, as well as her parliamentary extension, as if that wasn't bad enough. But, Mr Speaker, it is the role of the Prime Minister and the role of his Chief of Staff, Wayne Eagleson, that is clearly part of the web of deceit that has been woven by this Prime Minister. Wayne Eagleson is the person who intervened to make sure that phone records, swipe card records and emails were released. Parliamentary Services said no when the Henry inquiry asked for that twice. It was Wayne Eagleson's intervention as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, who, if we are told we are talking to Wayne Eagleson, we're talking to John Key, he is the person who intervened and said those records should be released. It is John Key who is responsible for this inquiry. It is John Key who is responsible for a massive breach of trust with the press gallery in this building and with parliamentarians. John Key has no right to be ordering that emails, phone records, mobile phone records of journalists or parliamentarians be released, and that is what he has done, Mr Speaker. This is just a continuation of this government's record of riding roughshod over the democratic process, be it through the teapot tapes and bringing people into the journalists and into the media outlets, the police being brought into there, whether it's the casino bill that rode roughshod over good process where the Prime Minister intervened, whether it's the protest at sea law where the government says you cannot protest within 500 metres of a boat, or whether it's the GCSB bill that plainly extends the powers of the GCSB to go well beyond where they are now to infringe on the privacy of New Zealanders. This government has no respect for democracy, Mr Speaker. This government is not acting in the way that New Zealanders would expect, that New Zealanders would want. That is a government that looks after its citizens. John Key needs to hear the lesson. This country is not some company he gets to play and trade around with. It is a democratic country where the rights and the rule of law count. This Prime Minister does not respect those. He should go.
Te Ura Flavel.
Thank you, Mr.